Hi there and welcome to Fuzzy on the Details. My name is Fuzzy and today I'm going to be reviewing the latest hardcover for the Marvel Multiverse role-playing game, the Secret Wars expansion. First off, I want to acknowledge that I was given a review PDF copy of the book by Marvel, but this is not a sponsored video and there was no expectations that I would do a review in exchange for that copy. Now the advanced copy means that I have been sitting with this book for a little while, so even though the video is dropping right now as folks are hopefully getting their hands on it, this is not a first impressions video. And as usual, there will be parts of this book that demand full video deep dives, and I'll be sure to knock out a few of those, but I do need all of you to let me know in the comments what you are most interested in seeing. All right, let's cover the basics. The Secret Wars expansion is $49.99. That's the same price point we've seen for all of these hardcovers, which all come in at 256 pages. The cover is by Sean Isaacs and Jesus Aburtov, with a convention-exclusive variant cover by Francesco Manna and Jesus Aburtov, which was only available at Gen Con. You can get the book at Demiplane for $34.99. That's the same price point as Avengers and Spider-Verse was. You can get it in PDF form at Drive-Thru RPG, and you'll be able to get it on Kindle for the same price. Now, at the time I'm recording this, it is not yet available on Amazon, the Kindle version. However, I did speak to Amir and CJ about this, and listen, guys, this is something that's not in Marvel's immediate control. Worry not, it is coming. If you are purchasing this book from your friendly neighborhood gaming store, be sure to ask them if they're participating in a program that will allow you to get the Demiplane version of the book for free. I think this is a great way for Marvel to support those local gaming stores, and again, not everyone is participating, but ask them and maybe it's not too late for them to get in on it. Right, let's take a look at some more credits. We've got Matt Forbeck, of course, back as the lead writer, as he has been for all of the expansions. Marty Forbeck and Alex Irving get another writing credit here. Marty, of course, has not contributed only profiles for the books, but plenty of chapters, and earlier this year, he wrote the Marvel Rivals Time Stream adventure. I've got an interview with Marty on the channel as we chat about that book, if you want to check that out. And Alex, of course, did help on last year's Avengers expansion, and this is not Alex's first book with the Secret Wars logo on the cover. Back in 2015, he wrote a Secret Wars novel. Not surprising that Matt tapped him on the shoulder to help him out with this book. And of course, we've got our good buddies CJ, Brian, and Amir from Marvel back in their familiar capacities. Can't say enough about these guys and everything that they bring to the game and to the community. We already talked about the cover artist, but we've got to shout out Brian F. and Patterson once again, bringing us lots of great maps. Now, one minor critique I've got to call out here, taking a look at the table of contents, there's something missing that we've seen in all of the other expansions, the authors' names listed by the chapter that they worked on or contributed to. For example, here is what the Avengers table of contents looks like with the author's name included. It would be nice if we made a return to that in future books. All right, let's get into the content. I think the first thing you need to know about this book is that while it is called Secret Wars, it's really a Secret Wars, Fantastic Four, and Guardians of the Galaxy book. Now, you've got this through line there with cosmic-level threats and events, but the theme of the book isn't as narrowly focused as, say, the X-Men, Spider-Verse, and Avengers hardcovers were. That's not a critique, just something I think everyone should be aware of when they pick up the hardcover. These lore chapters, as I call them, that kick off each expansion are familiar in layout as to what we've seen before. We've got brand new art, as usual, created for the book to kick off each chapter, and there's a detailed history of each team covering their initial formations and their later lineups, in the case of the Fantastic Four, even including the original Future Foundation. And for the FF, there is a lot of in-depth information about how they figured into the Secret Wars events in the comics. Their headquarters maps are very detailed. I've zoomed in here, showing you only about 1/10 of the Baxter Building map to show you the detail in the Fantastic Car. And with the Demiplane format now online, you will have access to much higher quality images that are going to look great whether you print them out or use them on a VTT. And to wrap up the chapter, you're going to get a little information about the opponents of the Fantastic Four, some advice on how to play them, some suggestions pulled right from the comics about how one might join the Fantastic Four. And finally, my favorite part of these chapters are the adventure hooks you get at the end, each one of which, with the information in this book, you could pretty much create a whole campaign about. The Guardians chapter follows pretty much the same format. And I think a lot of casual Guardians fans are going to find this chapter particularly useful because they spend a lot of time covering the earlier incarnations of the team, which, if you've only seen the movies, is going to be a lot of new information for you. So if you're unfamiliar with names like Charlie 27 or Martin X, or if the only version of Yondu you know is the one played by Michael Rooker, you're really going to get a lot out of this chapter. And I've said this before, even though I've got a lot of these early Guardians books in my collection and I read them back in the day, I always still get something out of this that I'm not going to get from a Wikipedia page, right? The people who work on these chapters are the people who have written either novels about this stuff, as with Alex Irving, or like with Matt Forbeck, is the guy who wrote several of the Marvel encyclopedias. You're going to get a much better understanding of these groups and their history from this book than you will from just reading a Wikipedia page. And finally, like the Fantastic Four chapter, you're going to get some information about how the Guardians figure into Secret Wars. You're going to get guidance on how to play them. You're going to get a really cool headquarters map of Nowhere by Brian Patterson. Suggestions on how to join the Guardians, and with the adventure hooks, they do something I really like. Rather than just giving us 5 like we got with the Fantastic Four, they split it up into 3 adventure hooks just for the original Guardians of the Galaxy, and 3 for the more modern incarnation. I really like that. The next chapter is on the negative zone, and obviously this is going to be a little different format because we're not talking about a team, but you are going to get some practical advice on how to actually play a game in the negative zone. So you're going to get the history, of course. You're going to get information about the different organizations. You're going to learn about Blastar, but you're also going to get like, hey, what are the physics of the negative zone and how does that impact my play? And the adventure hooks here, again, are really good and in a way almost more epic than the other ones that we've seen. You could not only base a campaign here, but I think a lot of these suggestions would be great for a West Marches style campaign. The next chapter is on galactic powers, and these are all of the different either organizations or individual planets or empires within the known multiverse. So this includes things like the Nova Corps, the Badoon Empire, the Brood, the Chitauri, so many different alien species. You know, if I have a complaint about this book, it's that I would have loved to seen this chapter doubled or even tripled in size. There are so many huge organizations or species that I would have loved to seen pages on rather than just one paragraph. We've got a whole chapter on Dr. Doom, specifically focusing on his role in the various Secret Wars. You've got advice on how to play him as a major antagonist in your campaign, and of course you've got some adventure hooks. And finally, we come to the Secret Wars chapter of the Secret Wars expansion. Now, as I've said before, you've got people working on this book who have written novels around Secret Wars, who have written encyclopedias for Marvel, and on top of that, I know that Matt Forbeck did an incredible amount of work researching everything that went into this chapter, and you were going to get in this chapter a very dense, concise, and accurate portrayal of what the Secret Wars were. And I just think the amount of research that Matt did for this chapter, it's obvious, and this chapter in particular, I think is so valuable, even as a guy that, like I've said before, has all of the original Secret Wars comics, read them back in the day, reread them a ton of times. There are still things that I've missed, and I really appreciate the amount of detail in this chapter. And you know, the combination of this chapter and Chapter 8 Battleworld, the vibe you get from these chapters is that this book can function like a campaign setting for another role-playing game, like say D&D or Pathfinder. You are not just getting information for information's sake, you are getting a blueprint in these chapters on how to run a game set in this world. How do you take the Secret Wars experience from the comics and soon from the movies, and how do you bring that to your table? So yeah, it's great to know how things played out in the comics, but this book goes a step further. It's giving you advice on how to move things forward, how to treat the Secret Wars as a big what-if comic, insert your characters into the world, provide you as a narrator with the rules you need to bring that experience to your table, and honestly translate concepts from the comics to the RPG in a really nice way that will allow you to use this as a springboard for your own adventures. Now you're going to get some hard concepts of like, hey, how does the government work within Battleworld? What are the specific laws? You know, who are the notable NPCs in each of these dozens of realms? The rules you're going to get are going to be translations into danger and loyalty scores. You know, and the adventure hooks are going to be tied to those details of each domain. The role-playing opportunities, say, in Higher Avalon, where rebellious attitudes are more common, it's going to be very different than, say, Doomguard, not just because of the level of threat, which of course is going to be much higher, but because of how difficult it is going to be to get out of the shadow and control of Dr. Doom. Now, the advice on how to run your own Secret Wars campaign extends to the beginning of the Rules chapter. It includes rules on how you might avoid consequences in these different realms depending on the loyalty scores of those realms. And most intriguing for me is how you run an event in this world. Think of an event just like you would in a comic book, a series of connected adventures that would cross comic lines. And it gives you advice on how to run a game just like how the comic might unfold. You can run a game with a core group of heroes, or like a crossover event, there's advice on how to bring in different teams, whether or not the same group of players are playing those teams, or if you're feeling ambitious, multiple narrators contributing to one huge event. As some of you might know, these are the kinds of things I've tried to do in my own actual plays, so it's really exciting to see that being formally brought to the game. I think these rules, if they take off, will offer something to the players of the Marvel Multiverse RPG that is very difficult to find in the communities of other role-playing games. And there are lots of good rules in the rules section that aren't directly tied to Secret Wars, although they certainly have their roots in the Secret Wars story. For example, zombie rules. We've seen this in the Tony Stark's workshop in the past. They have now formally been brought to the game, but we do have one addition that I really like, and that is of the amputation rules. This gives a character an opportunity to survive a zombie bite, which is typically very difficult to do. It's a very high target number, but it gives them an opportunity to do so at a great cost of losing a limb. This is something we've seen in TV shows like The Walking Dead and in other RPGs like Rotted Capes, so it's pretty cool to see that realized here. Another new rule I really like is the self-sacrifice rule. This is something we've seen in other RPGs. I can point to Deathbringer as being a recent example. And the basic idea is your character gets to do some truly heroic stuff, even or especially when they are out of focus and otherwise unable to do something of that size and magnitude. In short, you get to spend health instead of focus to use powers, and even if you do so and are not killed, there is a pretty good chance you might die anyway as a result of your heroic sacrifice. Really cool. You're going to get 6 pages of headquarters in this book, ranging from the rank 6 Isle of Agamotto to the rank 1 Zaji's village. Now, for me, one of the great things about this is not just being able to use these specific headquarters, but getting more information about how headquarters are built in the minds of Matt Forbeck and the other developers, so it's easier for you to homebrew your own. The same thing goes for vehicles. Yes, we get 5 new vehicles in this book, but the more vehicles we get in the game, the easier it is to homebrew your own. And aside from regular vehicles, we get Starship profiles. Starships are fun. They kind of blend the lines between headquarters and vehicles. We've got 8 different ones that are statted out for us, including the Starjammer, which is great. I've wanted to run a Starjammer campaign for a long time, and it's awesome to have the Starjammer here to kind of be a focal point for that. And that brings me to another minor criticism about the book, and it's that while it's great we have the Starjammer Starship profile and we have a Corsair profile, we don't have profiles for any of the other Starjammers. And to me, that just kind of feels a little incomplete. Now, obviously, this is a function of the page count. You can only have so many things in the book. And when you look at the number of profiles in this book, which is by far the smallest we've ever seen in an expansion, it's obvious that a lot of profiles hit the editing room floor. And maybe we'll see some of those, including the Starjammers, in an upcoming maybe adventure or source book. But for now, especially since the Starship rules were some of the things I was looking forward to the most, it just leaves me feeling a little bit wanting. But luckily, hey, creating new profiles is easy enough. Members of the community have already done so, so it's not the worst thing in the world. If you had to cut something, I'd say cutting a profile is the way to go. Also in the section on starships, we get some Starship battle rules. This includes guidance on how to translate the real-world physics of zero-G fighting into game rules, what happens when your starship gets to 0 health or when it's completely destroyed, and rules about how to board a ship and how teleporters work on a ship. I like that they don't get overly complicated with these rules. After all, you don't want them to get in the way of telling your story, you want them to supplement your story. And we're getting a little long here, so let's jump to Rank X characters, which I think is one of the most anticipated additions to the game, probably since the core rulebook came out. What's important here is that I think we have enough guidance to not only use the Rank X characters that have been presented, but to create our own, and you can easily do that actually in Demiplane. You've got unique Rank X origins, plus Rank X limitations, and even Rank X items. The book provides advice on how to confront Rank X characters, even defeat them, or becoming them, or stealing their powers. And I think those opportunities are the more compelling ones rather than looking at Rank X profiles and characters as the way you would look at a Rank 6 but just more powerful. Rank X characters are more than just a larger pool of health and focus points. These guys are infinitely powerful. And I mean that literally. The reason they don't have health or focus listed on their character profile sheet is because they have infinite health and focus. You simply cannot defeat a Rank X character the same way you could a Rank 6 one. So you can't kill them, but you could defeat them. And how do you do that? Well, Rank X characters have narrative limitations, like Galactus has a cosmic hunger. That is something that a group of heroes can manipulate to forestall him a little bit, maybe save their homeworld, which is a victory in and of itself, rather than, say, punching him out, which, not going to happen. All right, guys, we're pushing the 20-minute mark, and I think that's the point where YouTube stops sharing my videos with people. So, one, if you got to this point, please leave a like, please share this video with a friend. And don't forget, I've got a free Patreon that you can join where I will be posting some additional thoughts related to Secret Wars, and you're not going to be able to get to those if you're just subscribed on YouTube. My final recommendation here is I love this book, especially though as a narrator. It gives me lots of opportunities to create the types of games that I was leaning towards anyway, and it's the kind of book that just fuels my imagination and makes me want to homebrew more. If you're the type of narrator or player that looks to these books for more out-of-the-box functionality, you might see that as a negative. And I think that's fair criticism. You could look at the number of profiles in this book and say, well, I'm getting half the profiles I would from another book, and that might be a negative for you. I look at it as, hey, if I have one Celestial profile here that I can look at, it's going to be very easy for me to homebrew all of the other Celestial profiles I could use. But what I need is the tools to do that, and this book absolutely gives me those tools, the same way it gives me the tools to run my own Secret Wars campaign. And for me, that's important. If I wanted to just relive the existing Secret Wars, I would just reread the comics for the 40th or 50th time. So I'm really interested to know, how did this book land for you? Let me know in the comments, and as always, guys, thank you so much for listening. Lots more to come on the channel, Secret Wars and otherwise. I've got a ton of ideas bubbling in my head. There's tons of new products coming out between now and the end of the year. So please stay tuned, hit that subscribe button if you have not already, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Have a great day.